Hello, friends, and welcome to the latest episode of Ipswich Town Transfer Talk, the show where we bring you up to speed with everything going on Ipswich Town transfer-wise, ins and outs, rumours, gossip, try and separate a bit of the fact from the fiction. I'm joined by Andy Warren and Stuart Watson, live from Cornwall. Stewie. And in terms of this week, it's been a strangely quiet week for Ipswich Town compared to weeks that have gone before. No new faces through the door, obviously 8 already in. And number 9, it sounds like he's on the way, but he's not quite over the line yet. Mr. Hayden Coulson. Stewie, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, I'm in Cornwall, and Hayden Coulson has been in Cornwall recently with Middlesbrough on their annual Neil Warnock pre-season trip down to the southwest. He was involved in their game on Tuesday night, I think it was, and scored twice against Tavistock Town in a 7-0 thrashing of the non-league side down in Devon. Played the first 45 minutes. A wonderful piece of individual skill to get out of the tight space for one of his goals. He had an assist as well. People were wondering whether that might put the move to Ipswich on hold or off. My understanding since that game is still that move is still very much on. Ipswich are talks there to get him in on what looks like it will be a season-long loan, pretty advanced, and all signs point towards him becoming signing number 9 of the summer for Ipswich Town.
Andy, tell us a little bit about Coulson as a player. He's a left back primarily, isn't he? But he's another one of these versatile players that Paul Cook seems to be moving towards.
He is a left back, but the way people talk about him sounds quite Luke Garbuty to me, in that he's a left back perhaps by name, but his traits really lend towards getting forward, getting on the ball in forward roles. He's played a bit of number 10, I believe, at times as well. I think he'll come here as an attacking left back for Paul Cook, but clearly he's going to tick boxes. Paul Cook wants versatile players that can play in different positions. His defending has been maybe highlighted at times as things that could be improved upon. But in terms of what Paul Cook wants from fullbacks, which is to get beyond the winger so that the winger can come inside and operate there, he ticks boxes there. So I can certainly see him lining up as a very attacking left back should the move get done.
This is a player who was valued at £10 million about a year or so ago after he burst on the scene at Middlesbrough. Jonathan Woodgate gave him his chance. I don't know if you remember, there was a 3-3 championship opener against Luton that Middlesbrough were involved in. And Coulson got in that day, stayed in. He was named Middlesbrough's Young Player of the Year, and he was being linked with rivals Newcastle for £10 million in some of the nationals at that stage. Last season, he faded from the picture a little bit because I think Neil Warnock likes his defenders to defend. And as Andy says, Hayden Coulson is very much an attack-minded player. In the end, Warnock tried to convert him to a number 10 towards the end of last season. So he can play in a whole manner of positions. That kind of fits into Paul Cook wanting a tight-knit squad with players that can kind of shuffle around different positions. So I think this could be a really exciting signing for Ipswich.
And a tantalising prospect with Coulson on the left and Kane Vincent-Young on the right.
But yeah, that's what Paul Cook wants. He wants attacking fullback. So I think whoever lines up as a fullback for Paul Cook is going to be in the Kane Vincent-Young mould. Matt Penny, of course, already signed at left back. I certainly wouldn't be discounting him as an opening day starter either. And he's in a similar boat to Vincent-Young. So it's building blocks being put in place now as Paul Cook finally gets to make his mark in the transfer market as Ipswich manager.
So Coulson hopefully on his way. We're going to stick with Middlesbrough boys for the next player. And we're not just going to talk about Neil Warnock handing out signed pictures from his bum bag, because Middlesbrough, Neil Warnock's side, have gazumped Town for one of their top targets this summer. Matt Crooks won't be Town signing number 10 because he's a Middlesbrough player, Stuart.
Yes, the saga is over. I think it was June, early July time that we told our readers that Ipswich had made Matt Crooks one of, if not their top summer transfer target. For obvious reasons, we've seen what he's done in League One with Rotherham. We saw what he did in the Championship with them last season. The hope, as we've been saying throughout, was that Ipswich were in a position to get their man before perhaps some Championship clubs got their houses in order off the back of the COVID-19 pandemic. Rotherham quite clearly were very, very reticent to sell him to a League One rival. in the end, those Paul Warne quotes kind of said to me it was almost begging a Championship club to come forward. Please don't make us sell him to Ipswich. In the end, Middlesbrough have come forwards. They've managed to strike a deal. It's been reported from the Rotherham end that 1.1 million is the initial fee to sign him. So whether Ipswich would have pushed that far, we believe their bidding had kind of got up in towards the high six figures. Ultimately, I'm sure Matt Crooks would have wanted to stay a Championship player as well, and staying up north probably appealed to him as well. So all in all, this was probably an ambitious target for Ipswich, and it's one they've missed out on. Scott Fraser being in the building obviously lessens the blow of it somewhat, but still need some more reinforcements in that midfield position, and we move on to other targets.
Yeah, as you say, it was certainly an ambitious target. Town are lining up ambitious targets, aren't they? We've talked about that before. They've missed out now on Matt Crooks and Sonny Bradley. Andy, for you, how much of a blow is it not having Matt Crooks? Stu alluded there to Scott Fraser, who's obviously proven at this level and can play that number 10 position. Still a blow, though, to miss out on Crooks?
Yeah, I think when you make someone that level of kind of prime transfer target, it's a blow not to get it done. I think ultimately, if that deal had been done, it would have gone down as kind of the signing of the summer at League One level. Certainly at Ipswich, I'd have thought. But yes, Scott Fraser being here already before this has ultimately happened with Middlesbrough does lessen the blow there. I still think they definitely need another number 10 in there. They've let a lot of them go this summer. They were well stocked. They've let that stock go. I'm sure we're going to get onto another potential one of those in a minute, but they're going to need somebody else there. I don't think they're going to find somebody quite like Matt Crooks, though, in terms of build and approach to the game from that position. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm sure they'll get somebody else through the door.
Yeah, Crooks is certainly a one-off, isn't he? In terms of that's potential ins covered then. So now we have to turn to outs, and there are potential outs there as well, but there's a definite out we've had this morning. A young talent, Liam Gibbs, has exited Ipswich Town, and boys, Stewie, he's gone to Norwich City.
He has, yeah. Again, I think we told the readers mid-June that Norwich were interested in him. That got a bit of reaction. We got word earlier this month that Norwich had won the chase to get him, and it's been confirmed today that the two clubs have managed to kind of agree out of court almost on compensation for him, because he's obviously under the age of 24. He was out of contract. Ipswich failed to agree a new contract with him. They'd offered him better terms around Christmas time last year. Ultimately, Liam Gibbs and his representatives decided that that wasn't for them, and he's crossed the border, which is not many players do make that move either way in East Anglia over the years. So we shall see how he gets on up there. It's a sad one, because the glimpses that we've seen of him, both he obviously made his first team debut against Charlton last season. Few EFL Cup games, but was the kind of the centrepiece of that under-18 side that made it all the way to the semi-finals of the FA Youth Cup. I think Brian Clew, who you think of the players that Brian Clew's worked with over the years at Ipswich Town, he's, I think, at one stage labelled him as one of, if not the best young talents that he's worked with. So he's a player that could go on to big things, and to see him do that in the yellow and green of Norwich will sting. But Ipswich Town are in League One at the moment. That's their priority, and if they felt that they couldn't sort of go crazy with money for a young player who is certainly far from proven at the moment, that's the stance they've taken.
And it's worth stressing, isn't it, Andy? This is different to Town losing young talent, say like Ben Knight. Liam Gibbs was a professional and was out of contract, so a different scenario there for Town.
Yeah, it's essentially like any player who's out of contract and eventually moves on after rejecting new terms. Difference is he's under the age threshold where clubs are entitled to compensation. So as Stu said, that's been sorted kind of out of court. They've come to an agreement before going to any kind of arbitration. So yep, that's been done, and he goes to Norwich. He had other options, plenty of other options in the Championship and Premier League clubs too. Even I think Rangers up in Scotland had a little look at him. So he had options, taking the rivalry out of it, and this would have been a difficult decision for him, because I think he is from a family of Ipswich fans, kind of very, very based. taking the club out of it, I can see why Norwich would appeal. It's been a good pathway for players in recent years. Stuart Webber, obviously, up there, and Daniel Farker brought young players through. Max Aarons, Ben Godfrey, just being two examples of that, of players that were brought into the club from other clubs, just as Liam Gibbs has been done here, and then coming through the 23s first team, and then in Godfrey's case, moving on for significant money. So I can see why that would appeal, but it's going to hurt to see an Ipswich fan really making that journey in yellow and green if he gets as far as many think he can in the game.
So Liam Gibbs no longer an Ipswich Town player. Someone else who's not to be an Ipswich Town player for too much longer, Stewie, is Teddy Bishop, one of those many midfield options we referenced earlier. He looks like he's on his way to Lincoln.
He does, yeah. I think Andy wrote a story a number of weeks back saying Lincoln were leading the chase for Teddy Bishop. Ipswich took the 1-year extension option in his contract, I think, and Andy will correct me if I'm wrong, that was one that was kind of automatically triggered on appearances made last season. So that was kind of one that Ipswich had to take rather than chose to take very quickly. I think Paul Cook told Teddy that he was among the players that could move on this summer. And it's Lincoln that he'll be going to, a side that finished 5th and lost in the playoff final last season. Made some interesting signings this summer. Chris Maguire from Sunderland, some good Premier League loan signings as well. And they've done all right in recent years, Lincoln, haven't they? So it'll be interesting to see if that's a good fit for Teddy Bishop. He's another one of these homegrown players who's been with Ipswich Town man and boy from the age of 7, 8 years of age. And like Dazelle, like Lancaster, it's felt that perhaps it's time best for all parties to move on and try something new.
Andy, how do we feel about potentially or likely selling Teddy Bishop to a serious League One promotion rival?
I don't think there was any option but to do that, if I'm completely honest. I'm not. I think he's too good to play in League Two, so he wasn't going to go there. I'm not sure he would necessarily have got the role in a Championship club that he would have wanted. So I don't think he was going to go there either. So I think Teddy Bishop's market was a top half League One football club. So I think once Ipswich had come to the conclusion that actually Teddy's surplus to requirements, he can move on, I think it was inevitable, if I'm completely honest, that he would have ended up at a team that you would now deem as a rival to Ipswich. I like the move for Teddy, for his point of view. I think of all those players that Stu's just listed, of the 3 players there, he's probably the one that could benefit from the fresh start the most. I think he's got a lot to give. I think there's maybe people at Ipswich will always look at him kind of through injury eyes. And I think a fresh start somewhere else could be good for him. Lincoln have, from the way I understand it, Lincoln have been the main team that have wanted him throughout this summer. So for them to have earmarked him and for have got it done will be a confidence booster for him. And you know what? I think he could go on and do some decent things for Lincoln here.
Okay.
Sorry, you look at Teddy's career, we know what it is. He's burst through at 18. He played a key role in that Mick McCarthy side that finished 6th. Then the injuries bit. And it was last season, really, where it was probably, I think he ended up playing 28 games last season for Ipswich and was really starting to prove his fitness again, was starting to show that he could play back-to-back games, that he could complete 90 minutes. I mean, he leaves having made 81 starts and 51 sub-appearances over a very stop-start 7 years. And only 10 of those starts did he actually complete the game. So that will have been, when Andy says about the limited Championship interest, I think that would have been a huge red flag to anyone in the Championship. But a League One club are thinking we can get a very talented footballer here at quite a small price. I don't quite know what fee Ipswich will have got for him, but pretty nominal, maybe a bit more than nominal, but not a huge amount. So he may be, when people talk about ones that come back to bite them on the bum, there might be times next season when, if Lincoln are up there and he's doing well, that you think, well, couldn't he have fitted into a Paul Cook system? But I think it was pretty clear towards the back end of last season that perhaps Paul and Teddy were on different pages in terms of style and what he wanted to get out of Teddy. And Teddy looked a bit bemused at times post-match in terms of what Paul Cook was kind of telling him to do from the sidelines and how he quite fitted into this all-action dynamic 4-2-3-1 system. So I just don't think the two meshed particularly well, and it's for that reason he's moved on.
Stu, that you mentioned that look in his eyes. I spoke to him after the game at Portsmouth, where Ipswich lost there. He looked lost. I asked him kind of about his role in the team, what he was being asked to do, and he looked really confused and kind of beaten almost. It was quite sad to see, because Teddy's a player that I really like. He's got attributes that I really like, but certain styles aren't going to suit that kind of midfield player, and I think if he can go somewhere up at Lincoln where they like what he can bring and they're prepared to play to that, I think that could be a really good fit for him. I think of all the players maybe that are due a fresh start, I think this could be the best one potentially.
Okay, so Bishop, an impending departure. The final impending departure we're going to talk about this week is perhaps the crown jewel and perhaps the one that's going to hurt the most. Flynn Downs, midfield star, formerly one of the biggest things in League One. But he looks like he's on his way too, Stu, off to Bournemouth potentially.
Potentially, yeah. Bournemouth have made their move, and my understanding is that negotiations have hit a bit of a deadlock over the last week or so. Flynn is obviously part of the bomb squad, the Paul Cook bomb squad, along with Caden Jackson, Miles Kenlock, formerly Teddy Bishop, once he leaves. And Flynn wasn't involved in the opening under-23s game against Bury last week. Bournemouth had come in. He was kind of pulled out of the 23s team, and that looked like it was all going ahead. But as I say, negotiations over that have hit a bit of an impasse. Every penny's a prisoner, to slightly change a Mick McCarthy quote this transfer window, because I think post-COVID pandemic, people are really negotiating hard on every single penny in a transfer fee, and I think that's where Ipswich and Bournemouth are at this moment in time. So with those negotiations hit that sort of deadlock, Flynn was reintegrated into the 23s and played against Needham this week, which was a bit of a surprise to see him in the starting lineup there. So him and a few of the others that I mentioned played at Bloomfields on Wednesday night. I think he played about an hour or so of that game and came off. But yeah, the Bournemouth move could still happen, but there are others in the Championship sniffing around as well. Barnsley, Peterborough, could be others still come to the table yet. But Bournemouth, I think, would be the best move, probably both for Ipswich and Flynn. So watch this space on that one.
Is there any way, Andy, that Downs somehow stays a Town player? Because in terms of his qualities, he would seem to fit what Paul Cook's after. Clearly, we're talking about him being on his way out the door, but is there any chance of a reprieve, do you think, for Flynn?
I think it's an awful long way back at this stage. I think there's a lot of water under a pretty big bridge, which would be difficult from this point. I don't think it's impossible that he remains an Ipswich Town player. Whether that then translates into any kind of serious involvement, I can't see it at this stage. I think it's got to the point now for me where the move has to happen for the good of everyone. It's just about getting the deal that's best for everyone as well.
Okay, so just finally then, boys, we've talked about players leaving this summer. There've been a lot of the crown jewels, the likes of Dazelle, Downs, Bishop, Lancaster we've talked about. Which one of those players do you think Town may one day come to regret letting go? Is there one that stands out more for you, Stu?
I think I've said this throughout, that I think Flynn Downs is the player that I can see going on to do the biggest things in the game. I think he's got all the attributes physically and technically to play at the top level. But as Andy's just said, just because players could go on and do successful things, it doesn't mean that them leaving Ipswich Town at this moment in time is wrong. You have to play the situation, the cards as they're dealt. And at this moment in time, Ipswich Town, as we've said, needed that hard reset this summer. Many of these players have dropped down a level, which speaks volumes about the last couple of years. The ones that have moved on and perhaps will get a new lease of life, I don't think if necessarily they'd have stayed around at Ipswich, that would happen for them. So, but yes, Flynn will be the one I'm most disappointed about, because he, as you've said quite rightly, Mark, would be perfect to the Paul Cook system of being that dynamic all-action midfielder sat at the base of the midfield, but it's not looking like that's going to happen.
You agree, Andy?
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with that. I think he's clearly. I don't think there's a manager out there that wouldn't like a player of Flynn Downs' sort of skill set in their midfield. He's a well-rounded midfield player who can play higher than a team that's finished 9th and 11th in League One. So yeah, I think we may well see Flynn Downs accelerate past Ipswich Town. I think we'll see moments from a lot of these players that have moved on, because there are some technically good football players there, but like Stu's hinted at there, it doesn't mean that it's not the right time to change things. Ipswich have got their new squad now; they've got their new players, so it's down to them to deliver for Ipswich now. I'm sure those other players will have some moments, and I'm sure there'll be games where you see a highlight and think, "Oh, Ipswich have just lost at Fleetwood, but Teddy Bishop's just scored a screamer for Lincoln. Wish we'd kept him," but it doesn't mean it was the right thing.
Perfect segue there, Andy, because of course Ipswich Town are back at Portman Road tomorrow for the first time since December. Premier League, Crystal Palace, the visitors, for a friendly. So enjoy that match if you're going. Follow it with us online and in print. That's you brought up to speed with the latest Ipswich Town transfer talk. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.